ever been since the Cuban Missile Crisis. And that is terrifying.
Should you run or should you hide when you see a mushroom cloud? Nobody really has a plan for the aftermath of a nuclear detonation.
There is nothing to do. There is no population protection planning because everyone will be dead.
If nuclear war comes, there aren't going to be enough bulldozers to scrape the bodies off the streets.
Это не блеф.
What if someone launches a nuclear weapon? I noticed the deputy director of STRATCOM saying, deterrence holds, but if it doesn't, everything unravels. The number one most shocking out of the gate, oh my God, is how fast it all unravels. And that's why it begins in the first fraction of a second, which is when United States' incredible satellite technology can first see the nuclear launch. It's a very specific set of satellites, which are called SBIRS, the space-based infrared system of satellites. This massive school bus-sized satellite, they are looking down at the launch pads of the nuclear-armed nations so that they know in the first fraction of a second when that missile launches. Wait, how do they know? These satellite sensors can measure the plume on the hot rocket exhaust. You see this launch, ICBM, this giant 60-foot tall missile. It's on a road mobile launcher, which itself is astonishing. We don't have road mobile launchers in America, by the way, but they do in Russia and North Korea. And the reason we don't have them is your average American doesn't want an ICBM driving by, but that's okay in North Korea. This thing is taken out into a dirt field and it's launched. The SBIRS sees it in less than a second, and there begins this absolute massive 5-alarm fire alert, literally. Most of nuclear-armed nations, like for example Russia, announce their ICBM launches to other countries. And this is true even during the Ukraine war, because no one wants to start a nuclear war by accident. People let others know. The exception to the rule is North Korea. North Korea does not announce its launches. So how do we know it's not a mistake? You have this satellite system in space, but it communicates with ground systems. That is why it is called a system of systems. And so the data that gets sent down to the Earth, that machine learning understands that the trajectory of this launch is going to send it over the sea, or the trajectory of this launch is sending it into space. Those first few seconds are so critical, but also at the same time, there's absolutely no action to take except for counterattack if it's an actual launch. If you go deep into the Defense Department videos, they actually released some footage from the command center beneath Cheyenne Mountain. And it's remarkable because it's actual video footage. Looks like something out of the movies with a giant IMAX type screen with maps of the world, and you can see launches going off. Satellites are being launched. Short-range ballistic missiles are launched. We have our eye on all the missiles in Ukraine, and we, the Defense Department, can see all of this. The SBIRS satellites are focused on those launch pads that might launch an ICBM. It's amazing how fast the next big action happens. Within seconds, all the information lands at those 3 command centers. They have to notify the president. Oh my God, it just goes boom. There now will be a few minutes of verification, and they must get ready to brief the president. So the president gets told 5 or 6 minutes after launch. The entire system is also preparing for what must be a secondary confirmation, and that comes from the ground radar systems working to try and determine what the hell is going on. Yes, the president has sold.
Okay guys, they just updated the doomsday clock for 2026 and it's the closest it's ever been in history. This year they updated it to 85 seconds to midnight, up 4 seconds from last year at 89 seconds, which was also the closest we've ever been in history. We just keep breaking records every year. The number of seconds to midnight is a metaphor to how close we are to the end of the world rather than the actual amount of time that we have left here on Earth. And I left a brief description in the caption of exactly what the doomsday clock is. The reasons we're at 85 seconds is due to an alleged information Armageddon Armageddon due to AI, most notably AI-generated videos, which we can't tell apart from reality, policy shifts in climate change, apparently that's still a thing, biological threats in the form of lab-made pathogens without a coordinated international plan to manage the risks of accidental or intentional release. Been there, done that, am I right? And the biggest one on the list is the threat of nuclear escalation, due to not only the countless regional conflicts we've been having, but also the rapidly approaching expiration of the New START Treaty, a treaty that limited the number of long-range nuclear weapons that could be developed in countries like US and Russia, and also gave transparency to each of these countries to check on each other's nuclear arsenals whenever they wanted, which expires on February 5th, 2026, with no successor in place, so it's going to be an all-out free-for-all for building nukes for the first time since 1972. So yeah, 85 seconds, the closest to the end of the world we've ever been in history. Let's try moving it back for once next year.
Determination of the Bulletin Science and Security Board that humanity has not made sufficient progress on the existential risks that endanger us all. We thus move the clock forward.
The doomsday clock that predicts how close we are to global catastrophe has reached just 85 seconds to midnight, the closest we have ever been to annihilation. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists announced today the clock has moved 4 seconds closer to midnight than it had been previously set at last year. President of the Bulletin, Alexandra Bell, said that the combination of nuclear weapons, climate change, and disruptive technologies, potentially referring to AI, have put the world closer to catastrophic failure than ever before. The furthest the clock has been set was 17 minutes from midnight in 1991, just months before the fall of the Soviet Union.